In the frozen valleys of Mongolia, where the wind howled like wolves and the sky was heavy with gray clouds, a child was born who would change the fate of the world. His name was Temüjin. He did not come into a palace, nor into a city filled with riches. He came into a simple felt tent, where hunger gnawed at every breath and the cold pressed against every bone. His first cry was carried away by the storm outside, as if nature itself was whispering that this child was not ordinary. His father, Yasuge, was a tribal chief, not powerful, not wealthy, but a man of influence among his people. Yet power in the Mongol steppes was fragile, and alliances were as thin as ice in spring. Friends could turn to enemies overnight. When Temüjin was still a boy, his father was poisoned by rivals. In a single moment, his family fell from security to despair. The tribe that once swore loyalty scattered like dust in the wind. His mother and siblings were left abandoned, struggling to find food, struggling to live. Hunger became a constant shadow. They scavenged roots from the frozen ground, trapped fish from the river, and fought for survival in the cruel wilderness. Temüjin learned early that life itself was a battlefield, and only those who endured could win. But survival was not enough. One night, enemies captured him, bound his hands, and treated him like a slave. The ropes dug into his flesh, yet his eyes did not dim. In the darkness, he whispered to himself that he was not born for chains, he was born to rule. With courage burning inside him, he escaped, running barefoot over rocks, his blood staining the earth, his heart thundering with one thought: I will return, and they will kneel. That night was the first spark of the fire that would one day consume nations. As he grew into manhood, Temüjin's spirit became harder than iron. The endless hunger carved steel into his soul. Where others saw only despair, he saw training. He told his brothers and companions, hunger will not kill us, it will make us stronger. Our weapons are few, but our hearts are flames that no army can extinguish. His words burned into the minds of those who followed him. He was no longer just a boy of the steppes, he was becoming a leader. Step by step, he gathered followers. He understood the weakness of the tribes, division. Every clan fought its neighbor, spilling blood in endless feuds. But Temüjin dreamed of unity. He told the elders, if we remain scattered, we will die like dogs. But if we unite, we will roar like lions and the world will tremble. Some laughed, some resisted, but many saw truth in his eyes. His courage was contagious. He began forging alliances, offering loyalty, and crushing betrayal. In battle after battle, he proved that his vision was sharper than any blade. His strategies were swift as lightning. His attacks fell upon enemies like thunder. Each victory was not just blood won, but hearts conquered. Slowly, tribes began to bow to him. On a cold dawn, when his forces stood before him, he declared that he was no longer Temüjin, the boy who had suffered chains. He was Genghis Khan, universal ruler. His voice rolled like thunder across the steppe. The tribes roared back in unison, raising swords to the sky. At that moment, a nation was born. His army became a storm, disciplined beyond imagination. 10 men were commanded by one, 100 by another, 1,000 by yet another, and so on until tens of thousands moved as one living creature. Disobedience was punished by death. Mercy was weakness. His men rode horses like extensions of their own bodies. Arrows rained from their bows with terrifying speed. Drums thundered as they charged, hooves shaking the earth. When Genghis Khan led his men to a city, terror arrived before his soldiers did. The people would see the dust rising on the horizon, a wall of darkness, and they knew death was coming. A city's walls could not protect it from the patience of the Mongols. He starved them out, cut their water, waited until they broke. When the gates finally fell, his warriors swarmed like fire. Screams filled the air, steel clashed, blood ran in rivers. The sky turned black with smoke. He would stand high upon a hill, watching as the flames devoured the helpless, and he would whisper, "Fear is my greatest weapon." In Bukhara, he climbed the mosque's pulpit and declared, "I am the punishment of God. If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you." And then he ordered the city to be destroyed, its people enslaved, its wealth taken. Such was his wrath that the rivers ran red with blood. But Genghis Khan was more than a brute force. He was a mind of calculation. He sent spies before his armies, spreading rumors, breaking alliances, making enemies doubt each other. By the time his army appeared, fear had already defeated half the foe. His tactics were merciless but brilliant. He once said, "Conquering the world on horseback is easy, governing is hard." So he made laws, the yasa, that bound his empire in iron. Soldiers were disciplined, subjects treated with stern justice, and traitors executed without mercy. The Mongol Empire spread like wildfire, from the walls of China to the plains of Russia, from the deserts of Persia to the edges of Europe. In every land, mothers hushed their children with his name, "Sleep, or Genghis Khan will come." His very name was enough to shatter courage. In the fields of Russia, his armies stretched farther than the eye could see. The sound of hooves was like thunder rolling endlessly. Arrows blotted out the sun. Russian princes trembled, their cities burned, their people slaughtered. One of them whispered in horror, "These are not men, these are demons of the apocalypse." Genghis Khan's genius was not just in war but in vision. He created a world where trade could flow along the Silk Road under Mongol protection. Merchants could travel vast distances without fear. His empire was brutal, but it was also a bridge of cultures. Yet the man himself remained a mystery. As his conquests expanded, he never lost the fire of the boy who once ran barefoot through the snow. He never allowed himself to soften. He believed softness was the beginning of death. He pushed forward, always forward, hungry for more. But even he was mortal. On a campaign, he fell ill. His face, once fierce as a storm, grew pale. Yet his death was kept secret. His body was carried through the land, and to keep his burial site hidden, every witness along the way was killed. His grave vanished into legend. No one knows where the ruler of half the world lies. Perhaps beneath the mountains, perhaps under the rivers, but the earth itself has hidden him. What remained was not his body but his shadow. The shadow of a boy who became a slave who became a warrior who became a conqueror, and a conqueror who became the terror of the world. His story is carved into the blood and bones of nations. Even today, when the name Genghis Khan is spoken, there is an echo of hooves, the crack of arrows, and the cry of men who once thought themselves safe behind walls. And so the tale of Genghis Khan is not just the story of a man. It is the story of a storm that rose from the barren steppes, swept across continents, and reshaped history forever. Even as death closed in upon him, Genghis Khan's spirit refused to bend. His body was growing weak, but his eyes still carried the same fire that had burned since his boyhood. He looked at the generals who had ridden with him through deserts, over mountains, across the rivers of blood that the world had shed in his name. His voice was low, but it cut through the silence like a blade. He told them, "A man's body turns to dust, but his name can live forever. Do not let the fire die with me. Carry it across the earth. Make sure that when children are born, they grow up in the shadow of our glory. Make sure that when enemies hear the thunder of your hooves, they tremble and remember that they face the sons of Genghis Khan." The generals bowed their heads, but tears did not fall. Mongols were not raised to weep. They were raised to fight, to ride, to conquer. His words became a vow written not in ink but in the blood of those who would one day resist. His empire stretched farther than the imagination of men, and yet he wanted more. Even in death, he wanted more. They carried him in silence across the steppes, where the sky was wide and endless, where the wind still remembered the cries of his youth. Every warrior who saw the funeral procession lowered his head, but none dared speak of it aloud. His death was kept hidden, for even in death his enemies were not allowed victory. The earth swallowed him, and with him it swallowed a secret. No man knows where he rests, and perhaps it is better that way. For if his grave were found, the world would bow once more. But legends are not buried. Legends live in whispers, in the shiver that runs down a spine when a name is spoken. His story spread farther than his armies had ridden. In Europe, priests called him the scourge of God. In Asia, he was the unstoppable storm. In the deserts of Persia, mothers swore that his shadow still crossed the dunes at night. He had become more than a man, he had become a force of nature. And in truth, was that not what he always was? From the boy who gnawed on roots in the snow, from the slave who tore through ropes with bloodied hands, from the warrior who turned hunger into fire, he had been a storm in human form. He taught the world that destiny is not given, it is taken. He proved that walls are only illusions, that empires crumble when faced with courage, that a single man with unbreakable will can command the fate of millions. His legacy was not only destruction, though the ruins of cities bear witness to that. His legacy was the unity of a people who had once been scattered like dust. His legacy was the opening of the Silk Road, the mingling of East and West, the great highways of trade and culture guarded by Mongol spears. His legacy was law, order, and the terrifying certainty that no betrayal would go unpunished. And perhaps his greatest legacy was fear itself. For centuries, when children cried in the night, their mothers whispered, "Sleep, or Genghis Khan will come." Even now, the echo of those words drifts through time. Fear was his blade, sharper than steel, heavier than stone. He made it his ally, and with it, he conquered the world. But fear alone cannot explain his story. There was also vision, genius, and a heart that refused to yield. That is why history remembers him not merely as a conqueror, but as a titan who bent the world to his will. So when we speak of him now, we do not just speak of blood and fire. We speak of destiny itself, a destiny forged in hunger, tested in chains, proven in battle, and crowned in glory. And though the grass grows tall on the steppes, and though centuries have passed since the thunder of Mongol hooves shook the earth, if you close your eyes and listen to the wind, you might still hear it. The beat of drums, the scream of arrows, the thunder of horses, the voice of a man who rose from nothing to become everything. It is the voice of Genghis Khan, and it whispers across history, "I was born in the storm, I lived as a storm, and I shall never die."